Hey guys, what is going on? NG is back again with the first ever episode of the NXP Podcast. Joining me today on this premiere episode, we've got a few notable YouTubers. Flanking on my left, we've got the Pathofjiofreed, Danny Dement. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
Oh, I'm fine.
And I've got the ever so mysterious XAM 1000 he.
What's up, people?
Alright, so we literally just decided to start doing some form of podcast. So you guys might see more of these in the future on various topics. But the topic for tonight's video will be the Amazing Spider-Man. It's been quite a while since, we've all done a video discussing the reboot that is set to come out this summer. So I felt that a nice refresher course would be good, and as well as to give our general thoughts on what we think of the the new footage, the way that Mark Webb might take this franchise, and of course the haters, because hey, we always like to critique the idiots. So first off, for anybody who is not aware of what this whole reboot is, I don't know why. Sony Pictures announced that the entire Spider-Man film franchise would be receiving a reboot around 2 years ago. The general statement was that Spider-Man 4's production was really... Danny, wasn't Spider-Man's 4 production not going too well? There were people who were signed on.
There were all kinds of problems. They had people who they were casting who were then backing out because another thing came up and the dates were conflicted. They had a script that had to keep getting sent back to be rewritten because... various things happened. They had to switch out characters because, again, the actors couldn't show up, or they wound up, with scenes that they just didn't think were workable, so on and so forth. And then there was internal conflict about who was going to be in the film, period. Raimi had made it pretty clear who he wanted to be in the film. Studio thought thought it wasn't necessarily a good idea to go in this direction. Interestingly enough, the studio wanted to actually finally do the Lizard, since Raimi had been teasing us with it for 3 movies now, and Raimi though wanted to do the Vulture and something else, which we're going to talk about later, but. So because of all this conflicting, and because he had other movies that he had to go direct that were actually coming up, and he basically said that even if we got this done, I wouldn't be able to put all my effort into it because I'd be trying to direct 2 different things at once. They pretty much mutually decided to cancel the project. He went his way, and the studio took it, and they decided they were going to reboot it.
Yeah, definitely. I thought that personally, at the end of the day, I still am a fan of the Raimi films. I think people like to skew that out, saying that I completely hate on them. I generally do enjoy watching, 2 out of the 3. The third one I don't speak of. But
What third one?
There's a Spider-Man 3? What? I didn't know that. But it was a lot of things weren't falling into place. Studio versus director up the wazoo, and I was glad that it just ended off like that. That there was no big, huge fights between them. And I generally think when it ended, it was very respectful. And the fact that they're rebooting it still shows that they wanted to tell new stories with the Spider-Man license and go a different way. And I think the biggest point of all, when you're ignoring all this stuff, is the continuity was really fucked up with the 3rd film. Zam, you want to explain some of that?
Oh boy, it was really fucked up in the 3rd movie. They put in Venom for popular demand only, and Raimi said out loud that he's not a fan of Venom. He didn't want to do Venom, but even though it was even though he put him in there, it was his obligation to do good. And well, what do you know? He didn't do good with Venom. It was not even considered a half-assed Venom in my book, because that Venom, it was just so bad. I mean, he barely even had his full face on half the time, just to show the actor more times. I did not like that, and not to mention having him luring Spider-Man towards him luring Spider-Man to Sandman is not so, how should I say this, venomous in my book. I mean, it's not the Venom that I've read in the comics. I mean, it was overall a disaster from the very beginning. Having 3 villains and having one of them turn good, and it's cliche, it's stock, it's stupid, and even though it brought a message at the end, it was still forced, it was still stocked, and it was bad. I'm actually glad they're doing this reboot because, I mean, I think we've already explained why they're doing why they made this reboot so fast. But there's another reason why they didn't do it. But didn't you know that if Disney, if they didn't make a movie about Spider-Man pretty soon, they'd lose the rights to Sony would lose the rights to the Spider-Man, and it'll go back to Disney.
Exactly.
Well,
Disney would regain
two reasons
control.
For that. There's actually two reasons for that. It's not just the timeline either. It's the company, Sony Pictures, was actually nearing the point where Sony was seriously considering just shutting it down because the recession was in full swing and the film department wasn't doing as good as they had hoped, and they were actually seriously considering shutting it down and redirecting the funds to other departments in order to save the company money.
That's the thing about Sony nowadays. Sony really has to get their shit together, not just in their game department, but all over the place. But yeah, so as a genuine fan of the comics, I was happy for a reboot because they could go back and fix a lot of things that were wrong in the Raimi films. Actually do certain characters right, like Mary Jane this time around isn't Gwen Stacy in disguise.
That's an insult to Gwen Stacy.
Exactly.
She was more accurately Mary Sue. Okay, she was just a generic. No matter what she did, she was still somehow the perfect woman, even when she was a total. Yeah.
It just
Mary
generally
Jane.
made no sense for that. I think maybe because when they consider Mary Jane, because the 90s cartoon had Mary Jane, there was no instance of Gwen Stacy. I think maybe they want to appeal to those kids because they'll recognize her, but like. I just generally think they should have gone with Gwen Stacy because the scene in Spider-Man 2, well, not in Spider-Man 2, it was in Spider-Man 1 as well, when you actually think that Mary Jane is going to die when,
Yeah, they recreated the bridge scene for crying out loud.
Yeah, if you're going to recreate the bridge scene and not kill the character off, I'm like, that's a waste. What, you're going to do that again in number 2? No.
Yeah, they did. And number 3, and...
everywhere, man. So when are you gonna kill her off, Raimi?
She made Lois Lane seem competent when it came to avoiding getting captured by a villain. Okay,
and Kirsten Dunst definitely wasn't the best choice to play even a Mary Jane slash
Mary Jane was the complete opposite.
I just want to know how they thought she was going to maintain her likability after she left a man at the altar with nothing but a small note explaining why she wasn't going to marry him.
That I didn't understand that. I was like, what? And speaking of endings, I didn't understand Spider-Man's 3. That movie had 3 endings. Okay, the movie. Listen, the movie concludes. You think it concludes with Harry, Mary Jane, and Peter Parker, and then Harry supposedly dies, and you're like, oh man, the movie's about to end. You get up. Oh, fades to black. Funeral. Oh, okay, sit down, and then Peter Parker, and then he just walks away saying some inspirational line. Fades to black. You get up again. Oh no, something's gonna happen again. Oh god damn, I didn't even know when to get up. They had 3 endings, but anyway, we're getting really sidetracked. Reboot, called The Amazing Spider-Man, set to hit this summer, stars Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, Rhys Ifans as Kurt Connors / the Lizard, and I believe it was Dennis Leary as Captain Stacy, correct?
Yes, it is.
And that's really the majority of the main leads. And I honestly got to say, like, I honestly don't see anything wrong with the reboot so far.
There's nothing wrong with the reboot so far.
Well, there's a couple things that some people are going to nitpick about. I know somebody
they don't know
who's
what they're
still
talking
really,
about.
Well, no,
They
I
don't know what they're
somebody.
talking about.
No. I know somebody who's still really excited for the movie, but he's still upset that they did take one thing out that he was looking forward to seeing.
But the thing that people, like, I see a lot of people are judging this film saying that, oh, it's not going to be good as the original franchise. And I'm like, the original franchise had movies to develop. This is the first film. You can't expect them to put all of these villains in one, to introduce all these characters. That happens, with any franchise. They introduce them as they go along. And I just honestly think you have to wait to give this thing time to develop. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in a sequel. They already greenlit one, which is a bit too early, planning ahead, whatever. But like, some of the complaints are downright foolish. I mean, God, Zam, you want to clarify on some of those?
Should I even mention that the first movie was rushed to the shits? I mean, not just how he created his Hollywood budget Spider-Man costume. I mean, yeah, it looks like the classic suit from the comics, but the way they made it did not look like a teenager has made this thing in his house. Okay, it looks so fancy that it literally it's mind-bogglingly cheesy. Okay, and I mean, at least this new suit actually has more realism to it. It looks like a teenager actually made this suit. And not to mention, they've rushed several things, like how they met Jay Jonah and the crime spree. I mean, they just do it with montages. I mean, there's so much they can tell on Spider-Man's origin that they just rushed by everything, and it's
skipping to graduation.
Yes, they have. Yes, yes. Thank you for telling me that. Yes, graduation. Which through the majority of Spider-Man's comics, he is in high school, and people are complaining that he's back in high school when the majority of the comics he is in high school. In fact, it's only until the 1990s he graduates college. Spider-Man began in the 1960s.
But you know what the funny thing about that is, like people somehow think, oh, he's in high school, it doesn't matter if he went to college. No, the whole meaning of Spider-Man was that he was a boy who was in high school taking on a man's, work. That's why it wasn't Spider-Boy, Spider-Teen, it was Spider-Man. He was going through not only the struggles about trying to find himself in this world with these new superpowers, but also having to deal with being personally responsible for the death of his uncle, who is more or less a father to him, not to mention still being a social outcast. So the portrayal that Garfield is giving off, it's eerily scary to how it's supposed to be. This is Spider-Man's origin. This isn't wrapping it up so we can get to the next fight. This is generally cut and paste Spider-Man.
Not to mention, people keep saying that Spider-Man is supposed to be this... It's supposed to be funny, happy, and action-packed. No, it's not. Spider-Man juggles 3 elements: comedy, drama, and action. Okay? Spider-Man has had dark storytelling. Like, let me think of one. Oh, his origin. I mean, that's the thing that changed Spider-Man forever. Next to spoiler alert, Gwen's death.
Dan, you want to clarify after Zam?
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, all this time I keep hearing people say that it doesn't have the same atmosphere because Spider-Man was always more lighthearted and everything, and it's like, right from the get-go, Amazing Fantasy 15, it also has to do with how they perceive his character, too. When you look at how Peter Parker acted in that comic, yeah, sure, he was an outcast. Yeah, sure, he was, geeky and everything. He was a stereotypical nerd for back then. But people, for one thing, need to understand that the concept of a geek and a nerd has actually evolved since then. I mean, they seriously still want him with the, big round glasses and the sweater vest and that's not... Unless you're Santor, that's a different thing.
That's a whole nother story, but we ain't talking about politics. There's a lot of sensitive people over the internet.
Yeah, I'm just saying he's about the only person I know of that's well known that still rocks a sweater vest. But it works for him, I guess.
Yeah, he's crazy, but hey, he can rock a sweater vest.
But what we're trying to say is Spider-Man is not funny and comedic. No, Spider-Man does have its dark stories.
And also, the thing about it, when you got Spider-Man and Peter Parker, they're 2 separate entities while they are the same person. Peter Parker is the more introverted, reserved, not really the wisecracker that is Spider-Man. When he puts on the mask, though, that's a different story. He is everything he wanted to be. He's a different person, so that's why he can crack jokes at all of these people who are 2 times his size, because he can get away with it. He has the advent of having a mask. Yeah, nobody knows who he is. So when they look at this trailer, which is dealing more with Peter Parker's side, something they rushed in the first film, they automatically think of Spider-Man like, oh, he's supposed to be so happy and stuff, when even the cartoons, the 90s cartoon was still pretty dark. So I don't know where they're getting this notion that it's supposed to be all the way lighthearted. Like, where exactly?
Well, here's another thing, and this is something that Mark Webb said when it came to how he perceived the character and everything, is that when you look at him and when you actually look at how he acted early on, especially like in Amazing Fantasy 15 and in the early comics, when he was just starting to kind of come out of that shell and everything, but even in Amazing Fantasy 15 at times, he could be, well, for lack of a better term, he kind of had a chip on his shoulder. He, in a way, enjoyed being separate from everyone else. He kind of had an attitude problem, and it definitely did show through at first, especially after he put that suit on. Because, again, whereas it is very, he is far more uninhibited in that suit, it is still him. And frankly, Spider-Man could be a bit of an ass back then, or at least initially when he had that suit on. I mean, that's another thing that Raimi's movie kind of failed in. They made it seem like it was, turnabout, which is why he let that thug go. In the comic, he just let him run right by. No reason to not stop him or nothing. He just didn't give a crap. He was out for him. And that's something that, people forget about. And to Raimi's credit, he did, although he kind of, softened that to a point, he did kind of have the whole attitude thing going on as far as brewing under the surface with the way he was starting to snap at Uncle Ben and stuff. And I mean, it was in that movie too, so I don't know why they're throwing the fit that it's, even a little bit present in this one. Spider-Man and, Peter Parker did have a little bit of an attitude, and it's something that he also pointed out even in Amazing Spider-Man number 8. Spider-Man, or rather Peter Parker, is getting picked on by Flash, and he finally just gets sick of it, and he, basically says, screw it, and he challenges him to a boxing match. I mean, he did, whereas that suit did make him more uninhibited, and he was starting to come out of that shell, the fact that he no longer had this inhibition, even in one form, it kind of made him a little more, how do I put it, expressive. He didn't feel like he had to, hide himself anymore.
He felt confident.
Yeah, he had confidence now. He had a sense of self-worth now. He no longer felt like he had to separate himself. And so when someone was trying to push him around, he finally snapped and stood up to him. And, then, of course, he realizes what he's done afterward. And it's like, I've got this super strength now and everything. So the only way that I'm going to really save myself is to let him kick my butt. But at the same time, I want to preserve my dignity. But, that's there. And the fact that Mark Webb can actually point out how he sees the character based on the comics is actually pretty impressive. I don't think I've seen a lot of directors that can do something like that. They tend to be more vague and specific, and he's quoting an actual issue.
Exactly. The dedication that Mark Webb is putting into the character development of Peter Parker, how he's developing. Like, this majority of the movie, like I said, is going to focus on Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man, not just getting bit, donning the suit, and then going off to fight the next villain. No, like how he's going to transform, for lack of a more cooler word, from a caterpillar to a butterfly. I told you I can't think of something cool at this hour, but yeah, and another thing that I like to point out, judging based from the trailers alone, a lot of criticism was given that somehow Andrew Garfield, the way he's portraying Peter Parker, it's not suave, because, oh god, nerds are supposed to be suave, right? He's not supposed to be, fumbling, like getting scared around a pretty girl. Like, that's the thing. Like, do people really expect him to be like that self-confident. If they actually read the damn comics, Peter Parker is introverted. What the hell? Oh God, I have a headache.
Very socially awkward.
Peter Parker did finally sort of come into his own as he got older, but it wasn't until he was in college and he had been dating Gwen for a while, and she had a profound effect on him in that regard.
Yeah. But we're not there yet. This is the first
Yes, I know.
film.
This is just starting out. So, when he goes to see her for the first time, and she's like a study partner in the film, for a school project. So he's got to go up and see her, and it's at her family's house, and she asked him to stay for dinner since he was going to be there, and so he's going to be meeting her family, and meanwhile he has a crush on this girl, and then on top of those nerves. He bumps. This is a clip they released. He bumps into a doorman who's pretty much demanding that he let him see in his bag where he's got his suit hidden. And, he wants him to unzip it, let him see it, show me now. You don't show me, don't get inside. He's right in his face about it. He's being aggressive. Then you got this kid who's already a nervous teenager, getting berated like this. So, of course, he's going to be awkward and, stumbling over his words. That's the way it would actually go down. Yet when people, saw it, they kept screaming how it's, horrible acting and, bad dialogue. And,
I'd actually find it funny because I'd like to see if the majority of these people, how they would react in that sort of situation. Just saying, step into the shoes. But, yeah, definitely based off from what Garfield is giving off and the suit matter, like what Zam was pointing out, it is supposed to be like how somebody his age, like how would you make a suit? That was something that Mark Webb definitely stressed a lot during his Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con 2011 panel. Like how does a kid make a suit, given his materials? And one of the things I'm actually really glad about is they're definitely showing more of his intellectual side. What do you guys think about that?
Yes, great. I love that. Because I'm sorry. Even though the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was smart, I don't think he was as smart as Spider-Man was in the comics. This Spider-Man that I'm seeing from the trailer seems a lot more smarter than anything Tobey Maguire's pulling off.
Well, man, on that regard, here's another thing. The Spider-Man in the Raimi trilogy was always portrayed as being gifted or having the potential to be smart. In fact, that's something they cover in Spider-Man 2, that he has a gift and he needs to learn how to use it and not squelch it. And, but the thing is, Peter was always a prodigy, and it's something that they really needed to explore a little bit more. Which it's cool that they're doing that here. But I've actually seen people get this. Gwen was, smart too in the comics. That there was no, it was really no secret that part of the attraction between the two was intellectual.
Mm-hmm.
And but see, because she's got a internship at Oscorp in the movie, they're saying that this somehow proves that she's actually smarter than him, and so she's probably the one making all this stuff. It's ridiculous.
Oh man, because what we saw in the trailer of him actually building the web shooters, that's all Gwen.
The thing, and it's like he probably wouldn't be trying out for stuff like that at this point, even because again, he's a very shy, very introverted, insecure person, and to sit there and think you're going to stack up against all these other people that are going to be shooting for that same spot, he was probably too scared to try. But it's no secret, and it's made abundantly clear in this movie that he is, darn near a genius.
You know what? I think we should talk about, how Tobey Spider-Man is technically not the greatest interpretation of Spider-Man, which everyone seems to think Tobey Spider-Man is, when in fact, newsflash people, he's not. Tobey Maguire is not the greatest interpretation of Spider-Man. In fact, he's in my personal view, a half-assed Spider-Man. And this is coming from a guy who's collected the Spider-Man comics for years. And I will say this once, and I'll say it, and I will keep on saying it. Tobey Maguire is a half-assed Spider-Man and Peter Parker.
That's deep, man. That's definitely deep.
It is deep because I collect the comiks.
Yeah,
Don't question me.
Like
Don't
me,
question me.
I'm not questioning you, Zam, and all your wisdom. Well, I wouldn't go far to say is that like I totally hate the portrayal because, there are, certain aspects of it that I do like. But looking forward with Andrew Garfield, I think generally he's got to nail down what they're writing for him. Nitpicking is definitely the theme of when someone has a problem with this movie. I mean, some of the things that you'd see them say, even when you shut down those arguments, they still cling to the...
Well, here's the amazing thing. His emotional response at Comic-Con, get this, was supposedly just him acting. And these are the same people who, in the exact same breath, will then turn around and talk about what a sucky actor he is.
And this is the same person who's been nominated for multiple awards for The Social Network, yet he couldn't pull off a better acting performance than that. Maybe because it was genuine. like if he was really acting, he could have pulled off a better job. But he was here, living his dream, Comic-Con, playing a character who he grew up in, who he believed in. You really think he's gonna handle that with like an Academy Award winning performance? No. If anyone else was in his shoes, they would have done the same thing. You couldn't keep your cool.
Not to mention the guy is well known for his acting, and you guys are saying that he's acting bad when you don't even know the stereotypes of a nerd and how to be socially awkward. Oh my god, the whole emo thing with the freaking hair. Okay, seriously, you guys gotta forget about Edward Cullen, okay? Edward Cullen did not create that frickin' haircut. And secondly, Peter Parker has had that hairdo in the comics. Why don't you just pick it up and read it?
I guarantee the majority of these people don't read the comics, man. They watch the Raimi films. They might have picked up an issue and then say, "Oh no, it's going against it." But like seriously, the hair, really, the hair. Last time I checked, when I called somebody emo, it wasn't due to their hair, but I don't know what their personality was like.
Does anyone know what emo hairdos are? Emo hairdos do not stick up. They go down. Okay, they cover their eyes. That's
Sasuke.
Oh god.
Okay.
Sasuke's hair looks like a chicken's.
That's another thing that bothered me, and I'm glad I covered that up. Sheesh.
Well, there's actually, oh man, I could go down a bullet point list of all the stupid arguments I've heard as to why this movie's going to be so
Ramones!
Do it!
Oh yes, the Ramones shirt, yes. He's suddenly not a geek, and he's either a hipster or a punk rocker with an attitude.
Skateboard.
Ramones shirt, yep. He's got a skateboard and a Ramones shirt, and as we know, no nerd has ever skateboarded or listened to the Ramones. Well, the interesting thing is the reason that he's dressed the way he is, the reason that he's got that skateboard, the reason that he acts the way he does. A lot of people don't know this. Andrew Garfield actually, before they began shooting, actually went and moved into an apartment in Queens for 3 months to study how the kids act.
He's done his research, and modern kids, this is taking place. This isn't back in the day when the stereotypical of what a nerd is. Oh, he's got his pocket protector, suspenders, all that stuff. Now we've kind of moved on from that, and we have a different style of nerds. While they still act the same, they just dress differently.
Wait, can I touch on something? Is it just me, or is almost every character in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, do they act stereotypical? Don't you guys agree?
That depends. That depends.
I mean, come on, look
Jameson
at
Jameson was just a beast altogether. He was the best part about that trilogy.
Yeah.
Of course he was. But I'm talking about the secondary characters, like the pizza guy, or Bruce Campbell acting like that Italian restaurant guy, or the secondary characters acting.
Sam Raimi. No matter what Sam Raimi does, Sam Raimi can't help but put some camp into it. So.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's people are saying, people like to say, oh, this new movie stereotyping stuff, when Sam Raimi has stereotyped a lot of shit. And here's the thing. I know this because I'm a Sam Raimi fan. I own all his movies, and I know the guy very well. And even I know when it's the right time to say that he screwed up. And
that's the thing, though, man.
He screwed up with Spider-Man 3. He did half-ass with the first movie. He did okay with the second movie, but still a little bit overdramatic. They were not good Spider-Man movies. They were okay Spider-Man movies. They were not good Spider-Man movies. They were just okay Spider-Man movies.
Well, cinematically, I think they were pretty. From a cinematic standpoint, purely, the first one was decent. The second one was really good.
It
Cinematically
was
speaking.
obviously, yeah.
Just
Everything like
as a movie in general.
it's
But
good as a movie in
Well, yeah,
general.
the first movie was good, but it was so rushed, and you can tell by how this movie's coming out. You know how they're developing stuff very well, and Mark Webb is just taking the basics of the first movie and he's expanding it very well, and also making his own his own turns, and he's doing his own story while taking the basics of the comics in the first movie, and he's doing a great job with it, and he's expanding things and developing things very good.
Oh man, he's layering.
And then you have the first movie which is just it's just rushing things way too much with frickin' montages. People are going to complain that in this movie that J. Jonah Jameson is not going to be in this movie. Dude, you need to have a motive for J. Jonah Jameson to hate Spider-Man. That's what this first movie is for. We have we have Gwen's dad, who's gonna create this whole negative impression on Spider-Man, and that's what's gonna get J. Jonah Jameson to hate Spider-Man and pretty much go after him at every turn, just to catch him in the act that he wants to catch him at. See, don't you see what's going to happen?
Exactly. Like, that's the thing that when I said earlier that this is the start of a new franchise, so of course they have to take things slow and they'll introduce him at their own pace. Like, for example, if anyone has been following the social networking aspect of how they're marketing the film, they've released photos.
Oh god.
Yeah, Danny knows what I'm talking about. The photos that they released, they're Spider-Man swinging through New York right under a train, and there is a Daily Bugle sign with his logo on it. So they're not completely ruling out the aspect of J. Jonah Jameson. They don't need.
You know what's interesting? Some of those swings are actually the actor really swinging there. You see, in the Sam Raimi films, I think all the swings were just CGI. But
I can name about 5 jumps in all the movies that I remember that were actually an actor.
Yeah, but in this one, they're actually having the actor actually swing across for a few times, actually doing some real stuff. That's impressive. I mean, sure there'll be some swings that'll be CGI, but some of the swings are actually real, and that's impressive.
Mm-hmm. But one thing that I do want to point out, well, there's a couple things that I want to point out. Well, first of all, the viral marketing that they're doing for this movie, absolutely amazing, and I should know I've been like a one-man advertising firm for this movie. But seriously, the stuff that they're doing, they actually sent around to a lot of the publications that cover like, well, more specifically comic book movies and such. They sent them replicas of Peter Parker's backpack. They said all the stuff that is in there was in the movie at one point or another. They got his science notes, chemistry, biology. They've got a portfolio full of photographs and his camera. So he is a photographer, an amateur photographer. He likes to take pictures. They have articles clipped out of the Daily Bugle about the Spider-Man and pasted in a scrapbook. They have, oh man, they have all kinds of stuff that they put in there. That was just, it was awesome to see. And they've also been actually, oh, you know what? You'd have to. There's just so much that they've been doing. You'd have to see it to get all of it. But it's been nothing short of amazing. It's definitely managed to capture people's attention. But in terms of what they're doing in this movie and the depth that they're going to try to establish all this, I mean, seriously, I think we have like so far about 7 characters set up to appear at one point or another that are major players in the films, including Norman Osborn. I mean, Oscorp is there, and he's actually apparently mentioned only one time in the film, and I don't know if they even mentioned him by name. But, you know, they're definitely setting up for him to eventually appear.
I mean, think about it, folks. Think about it, folks. If they're mentioning his name in the trailers, then you know that he's going to be mentioned a lot in the film.
That's the thing, you know, they're putting in a lot of little Easter eggs that are going to expand into future movies. You know, the Daily Bugle.
Here's something that I should probably tell you that I don't.
I mean, even the trailers are entertaining people. That should tell you
exactly. Yeah, like, and like Danny said, you know, characters are obviously getting introduced. I mean, there's a lot of things going on here for the fans that they're actually going to do things that people have been wanting. Oh, J. Jonah Jameson. Oh, well, they got that little thing right there with the bugle. They're talking about Oscorp Norman Osborn. I mean, there's just so much. But Danny, you said you had something else to add?
Apparently there's going to be well, as a lot of people know, there was that Facebook campaign to get Donald Glover cast as Peter Parker.
Oh boy.
Well, it's interesting because this, I think, shows that they were at least listening, even if they did turn them down and say no. And that's the fact that they actually took Donald Glover, and they won't say what they did with it yet, though apparently someone tried to leak it or something. I'm not 100% sure if this is what they actually did. But there is actually an Easter egg involving Donald Glover and a Spider-Man costume in Peter Parker's room.
That's actually really intriguing. Well, I wasn't really for the casting of Donald Glover as Peter Parker. I mean...
now, what the rumor is that he's looking online and seeing what people are saying about him. And apparently there's people talking about making a movie of him, and they want this kid to play him because nobody knows what he looks like under that mask. And I think it's actually kind of a funny nod to the campaign and shows that, if nothing else, they did, they didn't just write him off and ignore him. So, yeah, that's something that you don't see every day.
So the next one we want to really talk about would be Rhys Ifans playing Kurt Connors, also known as the Lizard. Personally, I'm just going to get it out of the way. I'm glad that they're actually mixing it up with the villains this time around, because when they first announced it and they were going to be drawing stuff from Ultimate, I was like, oh, please, no, don't go in the same cycle. But casting of the Lizard, that was definitely surprising to me, because like, not only does it open up another great character, but, future possibilities of what they could do. And I thought it'd be very interesting to see how they would handle the Lizard in cinema. And Rhys Ifans, I was kind of skeptical at first of seeing him play him, but afterwards it's like you see how he acts, and then it's like you see him as the Lizard, Kurt Connors. It's like, wow. So, Zam, what do you think about Kurt Connors in this film?
I got a lot to say, actually. Okay, I was excited for him to be in the Raimi films, but sadly he wasn't. But then again, he's going to be put in this movie, which is even better. Okay? Now people are complaining, like, he does not look like the Lizard from the comics, or what's shown of him right now doesn't look like the Lizard from the comics. Actually, he does. He looks like the mutated form of the Lizard in the comics. You see, he's going to change into the full Lizard form near the end, or sort of near the end, because you see, at one part you see a humanoid lizard, then you see a scene where the lizard is reaching into the car with his claw, and the claw doesn't even look human. Okay, see, people have to put into details. They have to put attention into detail of what they see in the trailers. You see, the lizard is going to change throughout the film, and that's the thing.
Well, it's not just that, too. It's at one point in the trailer, you see that he's clearly got his eyes in the front of his head, and yet at another point in the trailer, you also see it's like opening up on the side. So he's clearly changing.
It's a transformation, definitely.
Now, I would have preferred if this would be like, having the character in one movie and have the Lizard in the second movie, like how they build up in the Raimi films where Kurt Connor was in there. And I was like, okay, introduce him in the sequel, and that would really do good. But that's the only thing that kind of disappointed me. But the way this movie is going, you know what? This could make up for it, because everything I'm seeing so far about this movie is doing great, and I think they're gonna totally blow my mind with the Lizard. I'm looking at screenshots of the Lizard right now. I'm just astonished. This is phenomenal. I have never been this impressed by a movie in a long time. This movie might beat The Dark Knight. I know you guys might hate me for this, but it's true. Because you see, with The Dark Knight, this is the third movie in the franchise, and the third movie has this curse for being the worst of the bunch. Now, with Nolan, there's definitely going to be a lot of good stuff in it. So I could be wrong. Maybe this third movie will do good, but it's going to have major competition with Spider-Man because it's just starting out. It's new, and we do not know what to expect except by the trailers and what's going on with the trailers. It looks phenomenal. Curse my Skype, but yeah.
Well, in the case of Christopher Nolan and The Dark Knight, we'll probably discuss that at a at a later podcast date.
We're supposed to be talking about the lizard.
Yeah, exactly. So, Danny, you want to discuss more on what you think about Kirk Connors in this film?
Well, to be honest, I'm definitely going to say that. Well, for me, I think he's acting pretty much like Kirk Connors actually does. He's certainly focused on his work, almost obsessively so, which Kirk Connors was. Hence why he was driven to,
that's because his arm was broke off. It was torn off in an army accident, so he wanted to regrow his arm back, and that was one of the driving factors of the character.
Well, yeah, but it's also important to note that his drive wasn't and still isn't completely selfish. Sure, it means he can do his own too, but he wants to help people. He wants to help other people like him.
It was never selfish.
And but see, I think they got how Kirk Connors behaves down pretty well. But what I'm really getting annoyed by is actually how people are reacting to it, because there are other points in the trailer where they say that he's acting like a douche, or he's being an ass, or so on and so forth, and he's acting like he likes being the lizard. It's like...
We're seeing him right before he transforms.
I know, he's actually in the middle of a transformation. His mind did start going as he kept changing back and forth, and that was even in the comics until Peter finally got him the antidote that, at least for a period of time, kept him from changing again.
You guys should know that people tend to act a lot different when they're mutating.
Oh no, really?
Well,
that's a common trait with fiction.
Yeah, exactly.
But another reason though that people don't understand as to why they chose the initial design that they chose for the lizard is because they were trying to. For one thing, it was very heavily influenced by Steve Ditko's original design, which, while this lizard does, at least for a time, have a more humanoid face than even that did, even that lizard didn't have a long snout or anything like that. It had a much more rounded head. The eyes were, not so beady, and they were a bit more humanoid. It could speak.
Well, this lizard had several different forms.
Yeah,
I mean, there's one form where he's full blown lizard. There's other forms where he's semi lizard, but he has consciousness. So there were actually times in the comics where he's actually helped Spider-Man, and then there was I mean, there's so many different layers to the lizard.
Yeah,
you got to keep that in mind.
He's not just one dimensional.
Yes, but another reason though that they went with it was and this is according to Mark Webb, is they wanted to do facial capture for Raisi Fons, because his facial expressions and everything are a very big part of how he acts. They're so subtle, and yet they add so much to how his performance comes across. And it's something that they really wanted to bring to life in the character, and if they have this long lizard-sounded thing, he's got to try to project all that into his voice. And while he is a good actor, he may not necessarily be the best voice actor from a purely voice perspective. And the fact that they were able actually to keep his facial expressions in there to help convey his emotions, I mean, it's going to come across a lot more natural and a lot less, cheesy, over the top, trying to sound angry or whatever voice acting.
Sad for you!
Oh, God. Yeah, but I mean, they're trying to capture, the subtlety of how a creature like that would actually look while speaking, how it would, respond, responds to stimulus, eyes widening, narrowing, facial expressions changing, softening, hardening, snarling.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of like an actual predator.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually a very interesting reason. I mean, the guy has got a reason for everything that he's done. He's explained it all. and it's even in regards to the lizard, and it just so frustrates me when people act like none of this is explained or makes sense when he's explained it like 100
It's
times.
the trailers, for frick's sakes.
And but my personal favorite is the current meme, Killer Croc.
No.
Play Batman Arkham Asylum. Oh my god, they look alike. Oh my god, this is a ripoff of Batman Arkham Asylum. You see, Spider-Man can't be original. And I'm like, oh, people, please, stop.
First off, Killer Croc in Arkham Asylum is bigger than the lizard that's going to be in the movie.
Obviously.
Is because everyone has been talking about the mask and how often it comes off and how it seems like he takes it off every time he's going to fight the lizard and how I don't know how to respond to this fully. Yes, it comes off, but no, not in the way you think it does. We see it off one time when he's lowering himself over this vat of chemicals and he's investigating, and he spins a web and he's crawling over it and he's checking it out. More likely than not taking a sample of it. But he takes it off because he's examining this stuff. He's trying to see it, as close as he can with his own eyes, nothing obstructing his view whatsoever. And when he's done, you watch him put it back on and leave. So he takes it off when he gets there, and he puts it back on, and he does that in the comics all the time.
And also it's in the trailer too. If you look close enough, like you can kind of piece bits together. You can actually see. I'm like, what? How are you gonna complain? Oh God.
And then there's another time when he's fighting the lizard up on this tower, and you see him. Oh, for one thing, you see him when he first approaches. At the very end of all the trailers, he's swinging around that tower. He swings right into the lizard. You can tell he's got his mask on. He takes it off. He takes it off when you see him working with something that is up on that tower. He's either trying to remove something or rewire something or something, but that's why he has it off.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's not like people are going to see him from on top of a building.
And then the third instance is when the police take it off, and it's like,
and
they managed.
Let me talk about this, okay?
I
mean, he doesn't want to take it off. I mean, the police take it off for him. It's not like he's trying to reveal his identity. It's the police that are trying to reveal his identity. That's why they're trying to take it off. And then after they take it off, he starts moving around while he fights, so they won't get a clear shot of his face.
Well, that's the thing. The setup for that entire scene is he's swinging around. They're chasing him with a helicopter, snipers on the roof, all that, and he's trying to dodge them. And lo and behold, the unthinkable happens. He runs out of web fluid. That's why you see him fall right out of the sky and slam into that taxi cab. Again, you got to piece this stuff together. You can tell what's part of the same scene here, people.
I don't know if
they got him surrounded.
I'm not going to be as arrogant and say that's going to happen, but I want to see the movie first. That's the thing.
Well, the thing is, I know he runs out of web fluid because when he's trying to escape, this is another thing, it was a leaked scene that someone recorded on the streets when they were filming. They were up on a roof and they saw him running down the street as fast as he could. Then he jumps onto the back of a pickup truck and hitches a ride on the back, clinging to the back of it to get away. With his mask back on, by the way. But again, so it's pretty clear there's going to be times he runs out of weather. And I'm thinking, and it really does look like that's what happens there, because again, piecing together from other parts of the trailer, you see him dodging a police helicopter, dodging the snipers. He's up in the air, he flips, and then, you see him same time of night, and the same taxi cab is behind him when he's sitting there cuffed when the cops are there. And, he falls, he slams onto the hood of that taxi cab, he rolls off. They surround him, they cuff him. Looks like Captain Stacy's the one who walks up, tries to pull his mask off, and the second he gets it off, he snaps the cuffs, knocks his legs off from under him, just keeps moving, keeps his head down, makes it so that no one can get a good look at him, goes off into the alley, and takes off. It's, that's happened before too. The guy's had nearly been unmasked in the comics and had to...
Yes.
It doesn't get much clearer than that.
And the reason that it's frankly an unfair comparison is that unlike in this movie, it happens, but nobody sees it. Nobody's around to see it. When it happens in the other ones, he's taking his mask off and crap in front of big crowds of people.
And they don't even mention his face, which is kind of stupid.
Yes, their admiration for him is just so great that they refuse to reveal his identity to the world. And
Oh, the drama.
Clearly
yeah. But
speaking.
yeah, so, and, I mean, there's a chance that maybe it'll get a little bit shredded when he's fighting the lizard, too, sure, but, shredded doesn't necessarily mean off. And he's not taking it off when he fights him. He takes it off after a certain point when he's fighting him, when he's working on that tower. I don't know what he's doing on there, but look. Well, I mean, they didn't show that in the trailer. They just showed that he's clearly doing something on there, and then it starts to collapse, and he jumps.
So now that we've covered all we had to say on Kirk Connors playing the Lizard, now let's touch up on Peter Parker's love interest, Gwen Stacy. So, I opened it up last time. Danny, what do you want to say about it?
Well, I will say that I was a little skeptical about Emma Stone playing Gwen Stacy until I did see some of the stuff with, that they released that showed her performance, and she is doing a pretty darn good job. And then someone actually did a side-by-side photo comparison from the comics with the way she looks in this movie. And, oh my god, it was like cloning. She actually does look just like her. It's uncanny. And, but what amuses me the most is how so many people don't seem to know that it's Gwen Stacy.
Let me speak about this.
Almost every Spider-Man trailer out there, every Spider-Man video you'll see, why is Mary Jane blonde?
So, Raimi, you see, this is one of my biggest gripes with the original
and then
trilogy.
When you say that's not Mary Jane, it's Gwen Stacy, they say, who the heck is that? And act like she's not even important.
Exactly. That's one of my biggest gripes with the Raimi trilogy is that Mary Jane was more or less turned into Gwen Stacy / the Mary Sue-esque character. That role should have been Gwen Stacy, and the fact that so many people are so ignorant to the fact is when they go into this, oh, Mary Jane, why are you blonde? It irritates me to no end, but...
it's right up there with the whole, why in the world is he using machines to shoot out his weapon?
Oh, yeah, because, artificial web slingers, none of that stuff was ever in the comics, but I think Zam wants to ram it on home with this one.
I just want to say, finally, Gwen Stacy's in this because, I mean, here's my gripe with the stuff they used to do with the Spider-Man franchise. I mean, even back in the animated series, okay? I mean, back in the old cartoon series of Spider-Man, they never touched on Gwen Stacy. And even in the movies, Gwen Stacy is not in there until the third movie, but we'll not even talk about the third movie.
Wait, there's a third movie?
Fuck that movie.
There's a third movie?
Fuck that movie.
What, Danny, what? Oh,
I don't know.
Man. No, as far as I'm concerned, there's only 2 Spider-Man movies, and there is only X-Men 1, 2, Wolverine, and First Class, okay? Third Spider-Man movie, I don't know. But continue, Zam, continue.
Okay, but, what I loved about Spectacular Spider-Man is that Gwen Stacy's there. I mean, they're talking about something that people don't usually... They're using a character that most people don't even use, and that's why I like, because she was very important in Peter's life. And now in this movie, they're putting Gwen into this. I mean, she was Peter Parker's first love interest, and I find what's very ironic is that they build Mary Jane to be like Gwen Stacy in the Sam Raimi movies, and here's the thing. Mary Jane is not supposed to act like Gwen. She's supposed to act like the total opposite.
Exactly. That's true.
Gwen is the smart Mary Sue, while Mary Jane is the fun-loving, wild. But you still like her. You see, you still like her even though she's fun and wild. Okay, she's like the anti-Gwen, so to speak. But I'm glad they're actually putting Gwen into this movie finally. I mean, it's like they're finally acknowledging she finally exists, and the people actually not know that she's ever exists. I mean that just makes me say, ha ha! Finally, she finally exists, and and you cannot deny it anymore. There's actually people that actually deny that Gwen even exists, or she's not even an important character. They even deny she's an important character when she's Spider-Man's first love interest, and when she died.
That is one of the most pivotal moments in entire Spider-Man history.
It changed Spider-Man's way of thinking for almost the majority of his comics.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how much of an impact it did. It even changed. I mean, when she died, it even changed Mary Jane's persona a little bit because the shock was so great.
Actually, you know, so the step in here was actually a pretty big change on Mary Jane's part. But seriously, when you look at how she's been portrayed in the popular media, it's either not at all, or people look at her and wonder who the heck she is. And I mean, for crying out loud, in Spider-Man 3, she shouldn't have been there. Period. If you're going to bring in Gwen Stacy at all, you bring her in where she belongs, or you don't bring her in at all. To literally bring her in as a throwaway character in Spider-Man 3, that's...
To create love drama.
Oh, yeah, and it's not even fully explored. It's like they chickened out and decided not...
Wait, Danny, I have a question. Whose decision was it to bring Gwen Stacy? Was it Raimi's or was it Sony's?
Oh, I think it was Raimi's.
Oh, God.
And here's the problem. People are saying, what's wrong with putting a second love interest in Spider-Man's life? I'm going to tell you why. Because there already is a love interest in Spider-Man's life after his pinnacle love interest. When she stops dating Mary Jane for a while in the comics, he meets up with Black Cat, who's you can say is Spider-Man's love interest, because Black Cat's sort of the Black Cat sort of likes Spider-Man more than Peter Parker because, well, she's sort of the superhero love interest, while Mary Jane's sort of the Peter Parker love interest, and that's why you should not introduce Gwen where she doesn't belong. She's not a second. She's not a second love interest. She's a first love interest. Mary Jane's the second one, and then there's Black Cat.
There's an order to all these things, and in order to, like, I felt it was a slap in the face, really.
It was a slap in the face. And if you looked at the sequels, what they're going with that, they're going to make the person who is going to be Black Cat into the Vulturess.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, that's one thing we didn't touch on, even though it is obvious. The continuity of what they were trying to introduce was just god-awful. And, you know, just to add my 2 cents on this whole...
In all fairness, though, the casting in Spider-Man 4, they were going to cast John Malkovich as Adrian Toomes.
That is a good choice for the Vulture.
Yes.
For a very sucky villain in Spider-Man, the Vulture, very sucky villain, but with
the Vulture
such a
was
good
always
actor.
kind of melodramatic ham when it came to his crimes and everything. John Malkovich.
Yes, but they're giving him a good actor in Spider-Man 4, and even though it did not happen, that was pretty much the only good thing that was going to be for that film.
Not much good was going on with Spider-Man 4 aside for that, but in order to finish up the whole topic on Gwen Stacy, I want to add my 2 cents. This whole thing about Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane, the whole thing how they were two polar opposites, but at the end of the day, they were still equally, desirable. Gwen was her own version and Mary Jane was her own version. When they did Mary Jane in the Raimi trilogies and then Gwen Stacy, I'm like, none of these are desirable to me. I'm like, wait, she trying to play her? Who? What? I didn't. And the more I really think about it, looking back on this whole Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane thing, I generally think that what they were trying to do with Mary Jane in the Raimi trilogy was, sort of adding characteristics of Gwen, but at the same time they really Mary Suitified her and she became generic, toned down. So really she doesn't have a place, honestly, in the Spider-Man universe other than the generic carbon copy Lois Lane, but that's what I think, really. Captain Stacy, so take it away, Zam.
Underrated freaking character. I mean, he's just as underrated as, well, how should I put this? He's just as underrated as Commissioner Gordon from Batman. That's how underrated he is. I mean,
Stacy was freaking awesome.
You know what? I actually want Danny to start this off because you know what? I want to build myself up because this is just a dream come true.
His body is getting ready.
Well, George Stacy, he's not only a seriously underrated character, but he's a very interesting character. He manages to have the distinct honor of being one of the only people to actually figure out that Peter Parker was Spider-Man based purely on detective work alone.
Wait, that's near the end. Don't spoil that.
Well, I'm not trying to. It's just that I'm trying. People have to.
Common fact.
I mean, this is well known. George Stacy was very interesting character in that regard. He was a very good detective. He was a very good policeman. He was very brave. He put his life on the line to protect his daughter, and even stuck his neck out for Spider-Man when the other police officers turned on him. He didn't trust him at first either, but once he had earned his trust, he was very loyal. He was, he'd stand up for him because he knew his character. He knew that there were things that people accused him of that he just wouldn't do. And even though it put him at odds with even some of the people under his own command, he stuck up for him.
And what people don't notice is that once he builds up this facade that Spider-Man's a bad guy, this will build up the controversy of Spider-Man, which will lead to, J. Jonah accusing Spider-Man of being what Captain Stacy says he is. Or the controversy of what people think of him is. Because
I think sets up a very interesting dynamic in this movie because at the same time, like I said, he did not trust him at first. He did not like the fact that he was going all vigilante, and it wasn't until he got to know him and see how he operated that he realized that he wasn't just doing this for fun or kicks or trying to work outside the law or circumvent it. In fact, there were many times he'd actually turn people over to them. But what is interesting to me, though, is that they're setting it up in this movie that he is one of the reasons for the distrust of Spider-Man in the general public and why Jameson starts his crusade against him and everything. It's going to be very interesting because as time goes by and he sees that he was wrong, he's also going to have to try to cope with the fact that he is in fact responsible for the public distrust of this man, this hero. So I think that's actually going to add some interesting emotional conflict as time goes by.
See how deep this is going to get? This is why we're so excited about this movie.
If you guys couldn't have told already from this, I don't know how long it's been going on, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff in here that they're setting up for sequels. They're setting up for great character development and what's going to happen.
Well,
it's not just going to be a straight line.
Well, what's interesting too is while they're setting it up for sequels, they're doing it subtly. So even if for whatever reason this movie just winds up being a one-shot thing, it's still.
No, I hope not.
I hope and pray not. But even if it does, it's not one of those cases where it's going to pin itself on having to have a sequel. It's just kind of dropping subtle hints of what's coming later. It's not like wait a minute, this was never explained. Oh, you have to see the next movie to figure it out, and then the next movie never comes. So
yeah, it's being done tastefully. It's being done as if they didn't get a chance to do a sequel. They're setting it up to be a great Spider-Man film, but also a great film in general. Not we can just finish it up later, which is something I have a problem with in gaming, where you think you can patch it later, but that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. Oh my God. This movie is turning out to be one gigantic colossal.
Jizz fest.
Yes, you can say that. It's nothing short of sheer brilliance. I have never been this excited for a movie in a long time, and I honestly think that this movie, it's kind of like baseball. If the Dark Knight doesn't bat this ball out of the field, then Spider-Man's gonna beat the Dark Knight Rises hands down.
Well, here's the other thing, though. Whereas this movie does look really well done, and it does look amazing, and it appears to be phenomenal, just like everything else, there is a complete, long list of stupid reasons to hate this movie.
Yes.
Oh, yes, we didn't cover enough already.
Yes,
but
we need to run down this list. This is just. We have all kinds of fun stuff here.
Just for old time's sakes, this will be the final part of the podcast we'll cover, because we pretty much summed up why it started out, what we thought of the characters, and now we'll just, even more just for fun, address some of the complaints. So take it away, Danny.
Let's rub salt in the wounds.
Number one, this is one of the number one here is one of the most stupid, honestly. And that's that because there's a funeral scene in the movie that you see. It's in the production photos. It's in the trailer, and you see police officers that are wearing dress uniforms. This therefore means that Captain Stacy has died, and Captain Stacy is going to be the one who dies and inspires him to become Spider-Man while Uncle Ben lives. There's just one problem. In that exact same trailer, you see Captain George Stacy at a press conference reading a press release saying, "I am issuing a warrant for the arrest of the vigilante known as Spider-Man."
He's doing it out of reaction from, the death of another person.
Well, I mean, Spider-Man...
I don't even know where they're coming up with these bases that Uncle Ben doesn't die. He's going to die.
Well, it's confirmed he's going to die. They didn't release, actually, someone else did. And the movie actually asked them to take down with it because apparently somebody caught it on film while they were filming the death scene of Uncle Ben. And they did let them keep the photos up, I guess. But, they've actually got photographs online of them shooting the scene where Uncle Ben dies. Martin Sheen apparently confirmed it quite a while before they even did that. So Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben is actually a very interesting casting choice, by the way.
Yeah, people, don't doubt the elusive man, okay?
Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben and Sally Field as Aunt May. But, that remains to be seen. We'll see when that happens. But, yes, Uncle Ben does die. Captain Stacy is still alive while he's Spider-Man. Captain Stacy is the one reading the issuance of the warrant for his arrest. So...
In fact, Captain Stacy is actually crucial in the series while after Uncle Ben dies. In fact, read some comics. I mean, he's crucial in the series while Gwen is still alive.
Another reason that I think is this one could be argued to be a little more legit, but when you think about it, and the keywords are think about it, it's actually not. And that's this concept that it ruins the entire dynamic between Gwen and Peter and Spider-Man because Gwen in the film learns that he is Spider-Man, whereas Gwen Stacy in the comics hated Spider-Man. Not necessarily so.
No, you see, here's what happened. Near the end, before she dies, she hates Spider-Man only because she thinks his father was killed by him when his father was killed by the Green Goblin.
Well, actually, it was... No, what she thinks... Okay, here's the thing. George Stacy was actually killed while in London. Peter...
Really? I'm sorry. I must have gotten it confused with something else. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, Peter was battling Dr. Octopus, and some debris fell and crushed him. Long story short, though, she actually blames him for her father's death because she thinks that he basically failed to save him. So, and people are like, well, that can't happen now because she'll know it's Peter. That's not necessarily the case, especially if the timing is done properly. They might have to kind of fudge the whole Dr. Octopus thing and the whole London thing, but they can still manage to make it happen if during one of his battles, in one way or another, George dies and she blames him for not saving him, which would also create some interesting conflict for when the Goblin does in fact kidnap her and try to hold her hostage. I'm just saying, it is still workable. I can think of at least 6 different scenarios where it's workable if the timing is proper.
That's the key point about it. I mean, and honestly, in my opinion, I think it actually could end up being even more of a conflict between them, because now that she knows he's Spider-Man, what's that going to do to her? Because she's, struggling with, women problems.
Well, it's also what people forget is that she, although she hated Spider-Man for that and blamed him, she was also starting to act a bit more cold toward Peter, too. More distant, didn't talk to him as much. She was a bit more broody than before. So, yeah, it is workable. I can easily see how you can adapt that and work it. So I really don't think that it ruins it. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's my opinion, anyways.
Let's go down the
When you,
list.
next on the list is the wrestling scene. They did admit that the scene where he wrestles with Crusher Hogan in the comics, or as he was altered into in the movies, Bonesaw, will not be present in the which a lot of people are like, but that's what shows that he was out for himself and doing it for money. Well, that's how they chose to portray it in the comics. I think especially set within this movie's own universe and what we've seen so far, there are many, many other ways that they can establish that. So, so long as they find a way to establish that, I really don't think the wrestling scene is going to be that big of a deal. I also think that it's going to make it a lot less obvious, that there's someone with superpowers running around. Um, because, when you go to this underground wrestling match and you start beating the crap out of a guy 5 times your size, and you start drawing massive crowds and everything, that's going to, I don't care if it's underground wrestling or bush league wrestling or what, that's going to draw some attention.
Yeah, pretty much.
But but there are other ways that they can establish that. So I really don't necessarily think that's going to kill it. That right there seems pretty nitpicky to me.
Most of the complaints are pretty nitpicky, man.
It's bitchy.
Like aside, it's
here's another one. The Lizard is a lame villain.
No, he's
because
not.
the last series we got to see Venom, and we got to see the Green Goblin, and we got to see Doc Ock, and instead all we get's the Lizard. It's like,
oh yeah, man, it's the Sandman. Yeah, he totally wasn't lame at
Sandman
all.
was an okay villain, but he's one of them that I consider more of a throwaway villain, kind of like Rhino, where they have their own arcs and they can be pretty good villains for what they do. It's just that they're good for limited scenarios. Or when they join a team such as the Sinister Six, which could actually be a possibility now. But which
could be depending on the Lizard's.
Well, yeah, that's another thing. That's another thing. Another.
Not kill the villains. I hope they do not kill the villains, because if they do not kill the villains, you know what happens? It means they can appear more in sequels, and also they can soon form the Sinister Six.
Well, that's another thing. People are already talking about, this is a different complaint altogether, but it's also kind of tied in. People are talking about this movie like they're already guaranteeing that Kurt Connors is going to die by the end. We have seen absolutely nothing in the trailers to indicate that whatsoever. We have seen nothing based on what? Plus, it's not a case of he's going to have to do whatever it takes to stop. This Peter Parker is a brainiac, like he was in the comics. How did Peter stop Kurt from becoming the Lizard in the comics? Why, he came out with a formula that actually retarded the mutation and made it so that he stopped transforming for a while.
In fact, in the majority of the comics, you see Dr. Connors is actually a friend of Peter Parker's, who's actually helped Peter Parker several times, may I add. And every time he fights the Lizard, he's always finding a way to change him back, because the Lizard is not only just a friend of, he's not just a friend of Peter Parker, but he also has a family.
And he knows that.
I mean, his wife and his young son Billy.
Yeah. So it's automatically assuming that the character is going to be killed off. I think they're just reading too much into it, just based off past experiences. But do you got any other complaints, Danny? Oh, wait, that's a stupid question. Of course you do.
Here's the big one. The parents.
Oh,
no. No. Oh, God. Who the hell would actually want to add depth and mystery, to a bunch of characters? Who the hell wants to do that? Who the hell wants to tie them into the potential Avenger sequel?
Somebody complained.
Let's assume that Peter Parker was born out of Aunt May's 80-year-old schniz.
Well, here's the funny part. God. I actually saw someone claim that they cannot possibly pull this off accurately, because in order for Peter to find out what happened to his parents, the Red Skull has to be involved.
Okay, people seem to have this strange, deluded fantasy on what's faithful to the comics, okay? You can either be faithful to the source, which is impossible because comic books don't have an end to them. So what's the other angle? You be faithful to the spirit of the franchise. Okay, that means you're able to take certain creative liberties and mash them together to make them more faithful to other issues and bring nod to other issues while staying original to the Spider-Man legacy. Okay.
Well, this is also a case.
Just like Dragon Ball Evolution.
Fuck you! Shut the fuck up. There's nothing about that movie that was good.
I had to do it.
Nothing
I just had to.
was good, okay? That movie does not.
Okay. Zam, we'll settle that later.
Okay, but
I don't know where to go.
Sorry you had to hear that. We've got him tased. He's fine. Okay. Now, when it comes to
he's sedated.
I hate you all.
Well, we hooked him up to Dragon Ball Evolution.
When it comes,
he'll know his place.
When it comes to the parents, though, this is another case where they're kind of drawing from the Ultimate series. I mean, they've established that Richard Parker was a scientist, which he was in the Ultimate series. They've established that he was working on a project, which is why he had to disappear, which is also from the Ultimate comics. Not necessarily why he had to disappear, but it led to his disappearance. We have it where that's actually kind of an interesting blend there, because the project is why he had to leave in the Ultimate, but the fact that he had to leave and go basically hide away somewhere is from the Amazing series too. If I'm not mistaken, and they do what I think they're going to do, especially since all these claims that, yeah, sure, maybe he's good with formulas, but there's no way he could mechanically build something like the web shooters. If it's anything like the Ultimate comics, when it came to the web shooters and the web fluid, his dad had already had a prototype for him, and he just modified it to make it more the way he wanted it, and then built the web shooters based on his dad's schematics and altered them to basically fit more to suit his needs. So that I think is actually pretty interesting.
Sounds more Peter Parker like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know.
I don't know. I just find it a lot more interesting. I think that there's a lot of intrigue and mystery going on there. And I think it adds a good deal of depth, but you've already got people talking about how it's fake drama, how this was never really important in the series anyway.
When it's always existed in the series, you gotta keep that in mind.
I honestly, since we've been recording this so far, I really don't think these guys are genuine fans of the original source material.
Well, you see, they're Raimi fans. That's the point. In fact, I've actually heard. Here's a complete I want to label now. Okay, that's not even on the list, but I'm gonna say it. You know what? I've actually heard a few people actually say, "Screw the source material. Raimi's films were the best." Okay. That's what they.
Oh God, I've heard that complaint too, Zam, a lot. Like, oh, even though this film is, accurate to the comic books, it's not gonna, kill my opinion on the Raimi films because those were great. They captured the spirit. I'm like, wait.
You know that tells me. It doesn't tell me that you're a fan. It doesn't tell me you're a fan of the Spider-Man franchise. It tells me that you're an anti-fan. You know what an anti-fan is? It means you're a fan of the concept that someone else made, but you're not a fan of the original source, which is actually the true vision of what Stan Lee wanted it to be. But his vision means nothing to you because you like, the heavily altered, not so well written other version better because of your own fanboyism. You see, you're not a fan of the franchise. You're a fan of what you perceive it. Okay, that's an anti-fan.
And that will lead into another discussion we will do, which ends up being on Dragon Ball Kai, which I think you guys know the notion of what you think it is. But to end off the part about Peter Parker's parents and that whole thing around that, I'm actually intrigued because with them being disappeared after a while, I think it might open some possibilities for future crossovers with with an Avengers sequel. Because Marvel totally didn't dismiss the claims that Spider-Man might have an appearance. I don't think appearance-wise, like he's gonna show up, but I think they might have a little nod, like someone's reading a newspaper, or there'll be something on TV saying, "Oh, masked vigilante looks like a spider protecting the city," while this stuff is going on. You know, that's just me. They might do it, they might not. You know, licensing and rights with Sony is still sketchy.
I've heard rumors circulating from everywhere from. At the end of the movie, they're like going through the city and they find one of his logos spray painted with a couple of those soldiers knocked out. Which I find a little less likely, but one of them that I thought that I've heard that could be possible is that what happens is one of the Avengers characters is reading the Daily Bugle, and there's an article about the masked vigilante,
Masked Menace
swinging through the streets of New York. It's like
which movie?
Written by J. Jonah
that would be
Jameson.
so awesome if they did that. That would be awesome.
Oh.
I know, and that would also bring up like people who are saying, "Oh, J. Jonah's not going to appear in this."
Well, also it's also worth noting that Marvel, although this is somewhat unrelated, but they did launch that Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon series. I've seen the first 2 episodes, and I don't know. I don't think it's quite as bad as a lot of people try to make it out to be, but that's another topic for some of them.
I still wish they would have continued Spectacular Spider-Man. They could have done so much with that.
But
awesome.
You're not going to believe this, but guess who they've actually got playing J. Jonah Jameson in the animated series?
The guy from the first movie.
J.K. motherfucking Simmons.
J.K. Simmons.
The guy from the
J.K.
Well,
Simmons.
to me, if Marvel still got him on call to be able to play Jameson in a Spider-Man cartoon, that's a good indication that they could also get him back to do movies.
Yep, the guy from the original movies.
If he's the best for the role, then hey, why not?
They did it with Hugh Jackman. Andrew Garfield should not be playing Peter Parker because he's British.
You know, I never thought people would stoop that low.
I mean, I don't see them having a problem with Christian Bale playing Batman. And he is British. He just knows how to hide his accent, so, yeah.
And
I never understood, I never thought that the fact that an actor is born in a certain place means that they are incapable of playing a character. They're not playing themselves.
Every time I see Garfield act, he definitely hides his British side pretty well.
Oh. Well,
Social Network?
Well, here's the irony in that statement. Andrew Garfield is actually American. He was born in America. His father is a native to Los Angeles. His mother, however, was from England, Essex, I believe. And when he was younger, they did move over there, and he did spend a lot of time growing up there, his mother being from there and everything. The family moved there. He was raised there for a good chunk of his life. He picked up the accent as a result, but he is actually born here in the United States. He's an American. At least, citizen.
It's just pathetic, really.
So,
I mean, wow.
He's grown up in both places. So,
he has a dual citizenship, for Christ's sake.
It's amazing. So even if your bigotry were true, it doesn't apply, but that's just offensive.
It seriously is, but they're literally grasping at straws here. It's like, oh, okay, so we couldn't disprove that he's emo. Man, you know, the clothing argument didn't work. Oh, wait a minute. He wasn't born here, so he is incapable of playing a New Yorker.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, here's a big shock. Superman's played by a British guy now, too.
Dun, dun, dun. La, 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 la. Oh, boy, isn't that something?
Basically, because they've grown up with the Raimi trilogy, and it's what they've known Spider-Man to be, that is what they're always going to love, and this ruins that for them.
Again, anti-fans.
And
also, they have the nostalgia glasses on
that's another
they were
thing.
younger.
Because that came first, this will never be as good, and so on and so forth. That argument is used everywhere these days, and it makes no sense.
It's the thing that motivates fanboyism to speak.
I'm not gonna lie. I grew up with a lot of the same stuff. You know, I grew up watching the Spider-Man movies. They came out throughout. Well, I didn't necessarily grow up, but they came out throughout my teen years. So they came out during a formative time of my life. I, saw the first one when I was 14, I think, and I've seen them, as they came out since then. And I have to be perfectly honest. I don't see how the fact that I grew up with these is supposed to affect how I see them. I'm that way with a lot of stuff, though, when it comes to cartoons, when it comes to, a lot of things. Just because something came out back then and I grew up with it, I don't know why that means that it automatically has better quality, especially when there's something else of demonstrably better quality, such as this movie, that is being produced, and yet somehow I just say it's not as good because I didn't grow up with it.
I see that a lot, definitely, Danny, when it comes to people judging newer shows. The older is better by default. Well, that may be true in a lot of cases. You have to learn to take off the nostalgia glasses, because nostalgia is a very, very powerful weapon. It's also very dangerous in how a person is influenced. I mean, people will be making decisions based off sheer nostalgia, and that's kind of clouding your judgment on what is good and what is not good. In the case of the Spider-Man films, like when the films came out, I was not even 10 years old, and I saw them in theaters. And while I did like the films, I would nowhere near say that nothing of better quality would ever come out later. I like the films. That's simply it. Like, I mean, I can like the Raimi films, and I can also like the Reboot. That's just the way I see it. Other people are saying that, oh no, it's either one or the other, and maybe that's just me being neutral on the whole matter. But what I really want people to take away is, don't let nostalgia cloud your judgment, because then you start to look like a fool and step on all of your points in your arguments. You have anything else to add on that, Zam? Because I believe you would be in your early to mid-teens when the films came out as well.
I was pretty much the exact same age. I was pretty much the exact same age as Danny was. So yes, I can relate a lot, actually. And from what you just said, Neo, I'm sure the fanboys are gritting at their teeth right now. But that's just that is just the truth, because fanboyism does not really prove anything. It just proves that you know little to nothing. What you need to do is look, more at the original source, what they're trying to adapt in this movie, and honestly, maybe you'll understand it more. But if you're gonna be those type of people where they know they're trying to be more faithful to the original source and say, I just like the Raimi movies better for this dumb reason or that dumb reason, then I gotta say you fail at life. And as for the people that are just too afraid to go into the theaters because they're so afraid of this Spider-Man movie getting the Edward Cullen Twilight treatment or made for teens treatment, Spider-Man was almost always in high school throughout the majority of his comics. So there's nothing really to fear. I mean, if anything, this movie's most definitely going to be a lot more like Spider-Man than Raimi's movies ever were. And I cannot say this enough. I am a hardcore Sam Raimi fan. In fact, I'm one of the biggest Sam Raimi fans out there. And I know when it's right to put my foot down and say Raimi did an okay job with Spider-Man. Never say never when with any franchise. Never say this franchise will always, like the first Batman movie with who directed the first Batman movies?
I believe it was Tim Burton.
Yes.
Wait, Tim Burton.
Yes. Never say Tim Burton will always have the most superior Batman when Nolan's movies has qualities even above the Tim Burton movies. Okay, this movie is going to have qualities, way more qualities above Raimi's movies. And honestly, as a fan of Raimi's sort of a guy that likes to go very campy with Spider-Man movies. or with any movies in general. And it's time to broaden Spider-Man's universe out and show you more of what Spider-Man's really about, because there is so much more to tell about Spidey's, Spider-Verse, and just introduce you to more content, more things they can introduce you to that's in Spider-Man's comics. And I gotta say, you guys are really missing out if you really think Sam Raimi is the end-all, be-all of Spider-Man, because it's not. Neither was Sam Raimi's origin of Spider-Man. It might have been the best in films because it's the only one in films. It's
Exactly, Zam. And getting back to your point on what you said about the campiness, I think like when you look at the classic cartoons of various superheroes, they were for their time extremely campy, and that's why we still like them to this day, and that's why we don't go too harsh on them when we're judging them nowadays. So if that's what Sam Raimi was trying to achieve, then whatever. But that worked for a cartoon in the heyday. This is something that's supposed to be taken extremely seriously, where they have the technology to actually tell these great stories. And Mark Webb is definitely, in my opinion, doing a better job than Raimi and that whole production did. And just imagine what it would be like if Twilight was never around. Do you think people would honestly be giving this film the amount of criticism it's gotten?
They would be giving half the amount of criticism this movie is getting, because here's the thing. People, I don't know why, they like to make conspiracy theories about movies nowadays, and I have no idea why. But that's sort of an off-topic thing. Twilight pretty much.
There's a conspiracy for everything.
Twilight just ruined everything. Okay, so it's best not to compare anything to Twilight. Okay, because Twilight just sucks, plain in general. So don't compare anything to it. Don't compare anything to it.
And now on to our final point in this long-ass discussion. We're going to be finishing up some talk on Gwen Stacy.
Now, Gwen Stacy was, in fact, Peter Parker's first serious girlfriend. She was his first actual love. Now, I'm definitely saying first, and not only because that's a whole new debate, and I know a lot of people that like to claim she's his only one true love, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe he would have married Mary Jane if he didn't love her, but that's, like I said, a debate for another day. But starting with Gwen, yes, they're actually throwing a fit because they're starting with Gwen. They're mad because they're not starting with Liz Allen, who was a one-sided crush that he had in high school, or because they're skipping over Betty Brand, which was a relatively short-lived relationship that went nowhere. Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane, those were his only two real serious relationships that he had in the comics.
Why do you think people still talk about them to this day? They're not talking about, Liz Allen. That's technically, if you want to go by his first official relationship. No, serious, life-changing.
Liz Allen, who I believe actually went on to marry Harry Osborn.
It's true.
Seriously, those things work if you're doing a series or an elongated thing or a TV show or something. They don't work for film because a one-sided crush that literally goes nowhere. She's like attracted to Spider-Man, which thinks Peter Parker's like absolutely nothing. It gives him no time of day whatsoever. So there's nothing to go on there. Betty Brand, like I said, is relatively short, comparatively very short. And again, nobody's going to want to see that for like one or two movies and then just have it go nowhere, It wouldn't work in terms of film, so they went with the one that actually lasted for a while because that works in movies. That's part of adapting things.
People don't think realistically.
I know. Honestly, I think it's just a nitpick. They're looking for reasons to hate on the movie.
Yeah. And what are you going to do except you have us over here who are going to slam all their arguments into the dirt?
And on that note of stupidity, I think we covered pretty much everything.
that's the end of this video, people. Post your comments. Give us some good feedback on what you thought about this. This is not going to be the end of this sort of discussion thing. Like we mentioned in the video, we've got a couple of things that we could branch off and also do some discussions on. So, from us to you for now, I'm NGS. That's Pathofjiofreed.
Yep. Oh, sorry.
And we've got the ever so elusive Zam 3000. He.
What's up? Or later.
And we'll catch you guys later. Peace.